I created this palette, and I'm going to tell you more about it later, based and inspired by cave paintings. These three are ochres: a yellow ochre, a red ochre, and a brown ochre. This is a mineral black, a manganese black. This is an ivory black, which means it's no longer made from ivory, luckily, but from bones. And the zinc white is not used in European cave paintings, which is the only ones I know anything about. But I don't have the chalk that they used in Europe, so I decided instead to be inspired by African cave painting. So the first thing I want to do is prepare the surface, so to speak, and the idea is to give these the look, the mottled look of a cave wall, so to speak. So I'm just kind of mixing the colors, and I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna make each one a little different. So this one's very light, and I'm gonna leave it like this. The next one I'm gonna use less water for, and so hopefully that will make it a little bit darker. The paper I'm using here is a Strathmore watercolor cards. This is a cellulose paper, so it's not really an artist quality paper, even though it's 140 pounds, so it's pretty thick. But I really like it for this kind of project because, as you will see, it lifts really easily. And in addition to using the white, we can gather some white or recoup some white from the paper itself. So I'm going to leave this one to dry, and this last one I'm going to make more grayish. And all I've done with this paper is attach it to a board. These are recycled boards from the back of frames, I believe, and used just a regular masking tape. So now we're gonna have to have the patience of letting these dry carefully. This is a painting of two mammoths from the cave of Rouffignac, sorry, in southwestern France, which is where a lot of the caves are located. So I just want to darken a bit the top with some red ochre, and also the bottom, just to give it a little bit more variety in the background. So this is just the red ochre. The background already has a fair amount of the brown ochre, so just trying to get variety here. And I'm going to heighten the lightness of the tops with some white. You can also achieve this simply by removing the color. Earth colors are fairly easy to lift. So for example, I'll show you. If I wanted to remove this, I could just kind of go like this with just clean water and a brush, and then with a paper towel, I'll have a bit of an old napkin from a French restaurant. I don't know why I brought it back. See, that's, you know, the effect is different. You might want the white for the effect of white, but if you don't have white, you don't really need it. Particularly if you use a paper such as this one, a cellulose paper, where lifting is easier. And I'm going to highlight the jaw by putting some yellow ochre just below it. And I'm going to let this dry before doing a pass with the black. This is a cave. It's not as well known as some others, Rouffignac, but it's known as the cave of the mammoths, or the cave of 100 mammoths, because it's known, like the majority of its images are of mammoths. So here I have two horses. The one on the left is a very famous horse. It's this is from the cave of Lascaux, and here I'm going to do some yellow ochre just to give variety to the background and highlight the whiteness of the painted area. The Rouffignac cave is about 13,000 years old, and this Lascaux is a little bit older, they think. I mean, this is not perfect dating. They think this is like 17,000 years ago, this. But this one that I'll also do is a head of a horse from the oldest European cave. It's also the one that was discovered most recently, Chauvet, which is in southern France, not as west as the other two. And that one, if you're interested, there is a documentary movie by the German director Werner Herzog called The Cave of Forgotten Dreams. I'm putting some color here because the bottom of the belly is white, and this having some color will highlight that. I'm also putting some brown ochre, otherwise it's too yellow. So anyway, so here we have two. I just put them together because they both have horses, and I thought it would be boring with just one horse. And I'm kind of playing with the background so as to heighten somehow the figures. This one, I'm going to put more white. I just find it completely amazing, mind-blowing that so many years ago, like 13,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, people were painting. And I don't know about you, but if you go and look at the at this cave painting, they're amazing. I mean, they just are so artistic. They capture so much. A sense of movement. And you know, it was dark in the cave, so these were not done from life. They were done from memory. So here I've done the background, getting ready for the painting the figures in a tiny bit when this dries. Now this is my favorite, both the cave in general and this image that I chose to be inspired by. This is Chauvet. I'm going to do lifting here, just to kind of show you and to have some more. It would be better if I had a harder brush, and in fact I'm probably ruining my brush by treating it like this. It is a cheap brush, it's not Kolinsky or anything. there's a lot of carbon black here, so it's a little bit trickier to lift than the ochre. But I am making it a little bit lighter. And I'm going to start with some ochres here. These are felines. I haven't seen them described as anything more specific than that. I imagine, I mean, they're large. They're some kind of what we would call mountain lions. So we're talking a long time ago, 30,000 years ago. And this cave was only discovered in the 1990s. That to me is amazing. Can you imagine finding something like this? I don't think it was completely accidental. I think these people were looking for it. But still, I'm gonna add some red ochre. I'm not completely following the originals. They had lovely stone shapes and colors to be inspired by, so I'm just trying to recreate some of that randomness. And then of course I'll go back for the lines, which are the most important thing here. And I'm gonna let this dry. So for this dun horse, that's what it's called. I think it's a kind of horse. I'm mixing some red and some yellow ochre. And just a little bit of brown ochre. And interestingly enough, and perhaps it's not a coincidence, I purchased these ochres from the last remaining ochre company in France. At least that's what they say. I have no reason to disbelieve them. And it's in the south of France. So, you know, materials are important in the art one chooses. And it's no coincidence, perhaps, that these artists, these very early artists, were able to paint, also thanks to the availability of paints. But, that said, something that's incredibly, to me, incredibly interesting, moving over to the Chauvet horse, is the fact that in Lascaux, some of the black that they found, so in most caves, black is charcoal, right? So much like ivory black that I just used here, they call it ivory black because it used to be made with burnt ivory, but more commonly burnt bones, so charcoal. So most of the black is charcoal, but in this particular cave of Lascaux, one of the most famous caves, probably, they found a lot of manganese black. And I have manganese black here. and we'll use it later. And what's fascinating about that, I'm using some white here, is that there is no manganese in that area. And the closest manganese deposits to Lascaux are 250 kilometers away. Now I'm going to the Rouffignac cave, the cave of the mammoths. And call me a romantic, but I think this would make a great love card, don't you think? Here's two mammoths crossing paths, crossing trunks. Only one seems to have you call those tusks, but they're cute, very simple. It's really amazing to me how these cave painters were able to tell so much with just so little. Much to learn from them. They don't really have shading on theirs, but they do have the texture provided by the cave, which I don't have, so I'm kind of making up for that with some extra color and shading. And I'm gonna leave this here. Now I go to my favorite one, the felines of Chauvet. They kind of look like bears a little bit. Not just because I'm not doing them justice. When I first saw them, I thought they were bears. And there were bears in these caves, but these are some kind of wild, large cat, which no longer exist in Europe. I watched the movie, or what I could stand of it. Sorry, I gotta readjust the camera. But I found it a little bit too auto-celebratory on the part of the filmmaker. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. I guess I would have been happy to just watch the caves. I would have liked to have seen more of the caves and hear less about the filmmaker or from him. And these do have a little bit of shading, actually, around the nose. They're almost cinematic. When you see several of the same beasts in slightly different position, you feel the movement. And I want to put some last touches on this using the manganese that was amazingly brought over 250 kilometers. What that tells you is how important this process of painting was, right? It was worth traveling far and bringing materials far to be able to obtain certain effects, which, they could have obtained similar ones. In fact, I don't know that I'm able to do justice to the difference between manganese black and carbon black or ivory black. But for them, it was worth the trip. So that amazes me. You've probably seen this horse before. It's one of the more famous cave paintings around. Chauvet is less famous, perhaps, likely because it hasn't been around as long. So it's not in history books the way that Lascaux is. So I'm going to stop here. Keep it simple. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you try it. it's really fun to be inspired by people that were doing what we want to do now already as early as 30,000 years ago. So again, I have Lascaux on the left, Chauvet on the right. These are the Chauvet felines. And these are the Rouffignac mammoths. Thank you.